Hello friends, welcome to the next edition of Immersive Outlook. We'll be going to talk about supply chain, about the disruptions, about the challenges, about the learnings, and how we are going to look at it from a perspective of we're planning for the growth, taking into account the resilience and the sustainability aspects as well. I'm very pleased to have my colleague Kunj joining with me today. And we are going to have a fairly insightful discussion with Akhil Saxena. Akhil is looking after the customer fulfillment operations and the worldwide customer service at Amazon. Not an easy shoe to fill in, I can say that. And given the fact that we are seeing so much of disruption along with so much of promise and growth, probably this would be a very, very exciting session for all of us. So with that, I would like to begin the conversation, Akhil. So first of all, Akhil, thank you for joining us today. If you can tell a little bit about your journey, particularly from a perspective of the growth and from the perspective of what has been some of the learnings and challenges in that whole journey, I think that will be great.
So first of all, thank you for the opportunity. I've been with Amazon for almost 10 years now, almost from the time that we started our operations in India. And I think our mission has always been to transform the way that India buys and India sells. And with that as a backdrop, I think a lot of the work that we've been done is by keeping the customer in the center of all our conversation and then working backwards to invent and simplify for them. Right? So how do we look at the interest of the customer, whether customers are people who sell on Amazon, sellers, or people who buy on Amazon like you and me, or people who provide services to us, or who buy services from Amazon. I think the challenge has been a blessing in disguise, I would say, because it's an opportunity for us to grow rapidly, and growth is a good problem to have. I think the big pieces for us was for me, I would say, would be to build a very strong team with experience. E-commerce is still very nascent in the country, even after 10, 15 years. And therefore, building a team of professionals who have got a lot of exposure in e-commerce operations, I think that was the first big opportunity and learning for us to say, how do you scale that team? How do you build that team? The other piece I would say would be the infrastructure. To say, when you want to fulfill different kinds of customers, different parts of the country, how do you build the infrastructure? And the journey of infrastructure building has been very exciting for us. The infrastructure part of, hey, we have to keep the inventory of the seller, so build this infrastructure. You have to do it in a manner that you are able to predict what cube that inventory is going to occupy. So books would have a very different cube versus mattresses and sofa sets and dining tables would be very different. And therefore, storage systems would have to be built accordingly. So I think we build the supply chain in different segments. So there's a fresh supply chain, there is a large and heavy bulky supply chain, and then there's a normal consumer business supply chain. So I think building those integral pieces. And then once you have this storage, how do you fulfill the orders? And therefore, finding ways to innovatively fulfill orders in a manner that we can provide speed and reliability to our customers. So 3 elements for us to think about. One is large selection and therefore storage spaces. Second piece, speedy and reliable delivery for our customers and therefore transportation and logistics. And the third is convenience and the security of buying online. I think those were the pieces that we worked our way through. And in logistics, I think we did a lot of work. When I give you a promise to say, I will deliver, if you order by this time, in the next 2 hours, 15 minutes, I'll give it to you tomorrow. In that promise, we are already taking into account a lot of things about where you are, where is the inventory, what is the flight or the train or the bus or the truck that I can put the shipment on? Will you be at home when I come to you? Will you pick up the phone when you are in the meeting or not, when I call you to say I'm going to deliver it? And the fact that it's a promise for a definitive time. And I think building those capabilities was the most exciting part of it. There's been a lot of learning, and a large part of the learning has been, how do you operate in a market which is predominantly cash on delivery? How do you operate in a market where address quality is not very great, and therefore you build pseudo addresses or address systems to then say a cluster of building is an address in our systems, and therefore how do you now deliver to that address? And the piece is about ecosystems that can work with us. Therefore, how do we leverage the ecosystem in which we operate, whether it is the mom and pop kirana stores or the entrepreneurs of India who want to be a part of a growth story, and onboarding that as part of a social responsibility. I think those were some of the key challenges and opportunities that we saw.
It was absolutely fascinating the way, Akhil, you explained the entire complexity of the supply chain, particularly connecting the buyers and the sellers, and also the fact that you are actually promising to deliver a certain shipment to a certain customer within a specific time frame. We do a lot of research in terms of looking at the trends from a CEO perspective every year. So this year's PwC Global CEO Survey said that more than 50% of our CEOs are actually very worried about the disruptions which is happening around, as well as the disruptions which is affecting them in their own organization. Given the fact that you are juggling with so many variables and the last mile is not getting simpler by the day, would be great to hear some of your thoughts and experience around how are you dealing with some of these disruptions, which has become more of an order rather than an exception.
That's a great question, Sudipto. I think disruptions are here to stay. They're not going away in a big hurry. The last 2.5 years of COVID has told us how disruptive it could be. And supply chains globally are being impacted by it. You look at any kind of supply chain, for example, right now the supply chain in semiconductors is so significantly impacted that even from a small camera manufacturing to a car manufacturing to automation, etc., is all getting impacted and it's delayed. So that's not going away. And I think the piece for us would always be to see how can our supply chains be more resilient and how can they be more agile, and are they providing us an opportunity to invent and innovate? I think those are the three big pieces I would say. So from a resilience perspective, looking at a supply base and saying, where is that supply base? Is it close to point of consumption? Is it close to point of customer? And is there an opportunity to either find alternatives and substitutes or to move the supplier base more closer in terms of stopping imports and being more self-reliant? I think that's one big piece there. The second piece is end-to-end visibility in the supply chains to say, look, what happened to my shipment which is coming from point A to point B? But if you lose visibility of that shipment, you don't know when you're going to get it. And that adds to the anxiety and stresses the supply chain. Therefore, that end-to-end supply chain visibility is going to be a very important thing for anybody there. The third piece is flexibility, right? How flexible are we? So how quickly can you change your manufacturing practices? How quickly can you change your formulations if you are into manufacturing of cosmetics, color cosmetics, products which have raw materials which are replaceable? I think that flexibility comes in very quickly and that's going to be required. The other piece is that how do you become more self-reliant? And this Atma Bharat is a great way to say, how do we do it ourselves? How do we do it in a manner that we don't depend too much on imports, but we could do it on our own? So I think we just have to embrace this piece. I mean, fighting this to say become more sustainable and be more precise is unlikely to happen. But embracing that to say there will be uncertainties, but how quickly can we move on that uncertainty, I think is going to be the big piece for us globally.
I wanted to pick up from your first answer, when you talked about your vision to transform the way India buys, the way India sells, and I thought we should add an element which is the way India distributes, right? And picking from that and the self-sustaining, you just launched your cargo airlines, and that's a big move. That's a massive. Congratulations on doing that. What prompted that? How did you go about what prompted that, and what are some of the big factors that you considered?
I think we have been working with a lot of partners in the airline industry, and we'll continue to partner with others as well. I think we saw the opportunity to serve our customers much better. Our prime customer base is growing in India. Customers are unrelentless. They want to get more and more and more in terms of speed. If it was 2 days, then it's 1 day. If it's 1 day, it's the same day. If it's same day, in an hour, and so on. So people want it faster. And how do we give our customers a great shopping experience where speed and reliability both come hand in hand? I can promise you something but be unreliable, and that doesn't serve the purpose. So I have to be having the speed and reliability. One of the things we realized is by having our own network of operations in the air, we would be able to push out our customer cutoff ordering times to a later hour, because we have more flexibility on the routines and how the aircrafts are routed. We saw this benefit in North America and Europe. We've been doing this since 2016. We now have almost 110 cities, 110 planes that we operate right now globally. So the benefit for us has been to partner with other people in the airlines industry and take the advantage of their experience, their knowledge in running a plane, but bring in our expertise on network design, customer cutoffs, and therefore have more visibility on the shipments, number one. Number two, a delayed customer promise. That means you can order later in the day so that you can get the shipment next day. I'm not dependent on the commercial carrier airlines, which has a 5 p.m. cutoff, versus saying I can depart this at midnight and still be in Delhi at 4 a.m. in the morning.
A little bit like vertical integration is what we are seeing, and more of those areas that comes within your control. You mentioned that as part of disruptions as well. So what are some of the other large areas of investments that you are looking 3 to 5 years out, if you were to think about from now? What are those that you are investing in?
I think I would step back and say the investments are all focused on the customer, right? What does the customer need? And customer, as I said, is seller or a buyer. Working backwards from that piece, the investments are likely to be in the area of technology. We build our own software. We write our own code for solutions for our customers, so fulfilling it with speed and reliability, as I mentioned.
So there has to be something that's for immediate term, keeps you agile, but also the long term. And I'm interested to hear more of the long term stuff.
I think the investments are going to be more focused on what our customers want and how do we serve those needs, whether they are sellers or buyers or provide services to Amazon or take services from Amazon. So in my mind, we could segment them into a couple of places. One would be in terms of technology, to say, how do we bring in technology which allows faster delivery, faster reliable delivery, a large selection visibility to customers, a better way to browse the net, browse the shopping pages. And this is being done across all e-commerce companies there. Similarly, using technology to fulfill orders faster. Robotics is a good example of saying, how do countries bring in robotics, and do you bring in the full suite of robotic products, or do you bring in what is relevant to the country, what is affordable to the customers, and what will work there? So I think automation is a big piece there. The second piece is infrastructure, where all this automation is likely to fit in. Whether it is warehouses, what kind of warehouses should we be building? Should they be small buildings in the heart of the city? Should they be large buildings outside the cities? And therefore, the topology will depend upon what the customer needs. How quickly do you want to fulfill? Not everything has to be fulfilled in the next hour. Not everything can wait for 15 days, right? So you have to find the right way of serving the customers. So there's a lot more in terms of design of the warehousing. The e-commerce industry has allowed investments in the country to raise the bar on warehousing grade. So you see a lot of A-grade warehousing now available in the country. The third piece is logistics. And this investment that we talked about, the Amazon Air that we launched, is also a great investment in helping the infrastructure of the country. Right? It is strengthening the middle mile. It's strengthening the backbone for our operations to move from point A to point B. And therefore, any investment that we make in infrastructure is going to help the country. And for us, therefore, the investments which are there over the next 3 to 5 years are going to basically serve as a boost to growth for not just e-commerce, but many other industries as well. I think those would be the 3 big things. Within those, I would put in a lot about IoT and analytics. Like, for example, for a fresh business, when you're buying vegetables or when you're sorting tomatoes, we use vision systems to determine which is ripe and which is not ripe. And therefore, it can be done with a vision camera to sort between ripe, non-ripe, ripe, non-ripe, ripe, non-ripe. That's one small example of how you could now start using different technologies. During COVID, when we had to do social distancing, we used something which is a distance assistant. We built a technology based on vision to identify whether people were being able to maintain the 2 meter social distancing that we were supposed to do, or throw an audio alarm with a red mark on the floor as a camera to say, hey, the distance is being compromised. So move apart, right? That's the future of many of these pieces here.
Thank you so much for sharing those. One element that I picked from there is the multiplier effect of this. This is not only for you, but how it will strengthen the country's infrastructure, which we have seen over the last 10 years of your presence, a little over 10 years of your presence in India. This has propelled so many new areas, new companies, new industries, and the whole ecosystem that has come to be. So it's fantastic to see that. And
you should see the ancillary industry development that's happening. So for example, when we have a warehouse in a place, there's a busing, that we are bringing people to come and work for us. There's an advantage for people who want to bring in a transportation service. There's a fillip to the trucking industry in that area. There are people who come in and do operations in security, housekeeping, gardening, etc. There's a network of suppliers who are now going to get us the packaging material that we need. I can't be moving corrugate from Delhi to Chennai. It won't make sense. So I will build a corrugate manufacturer base around Chennai so that I can supply it locally. And that, Philip, is something which is very powerful because it's a virtuous cycle of positivity.
You have been a digital first and an AI first organization by all means. What will be some of the specific things which you think has differentiated, and things like, like giving an estimate of when something is going to get shipped, or reliably connecting the physical flow of the supply chain with the information flow of the supply chain. So it will be great to hear some of your perspectives of what you think have been very successful, and also what are some of the new things which are going to come up as well.
Yeah, I would think about data as the first piece, that data pipeline, to say, how do you use all the data that is available to you, and how do you use that to serve the customers more efficiently? And if data is available but it is not connected together, it's hard to make out much out of it, right? Therefore, how do you have a seamless data which flows through across different parts of the supply chain to provide end-to-end visibility? I think that's a piece that many companies are now working on and have succeeded in ensuring end-to-end visibility. So that would be one area that I would talk about. The second piece is in terms of how automation comes into play. And if you go to Google and see some of the work that Amazon has done in terms of robotics, Sparrow is one of the latest features that we built in, allows us to automate tasks which are repetitive and can be done with machines. And then the human intelligence goes behind writing the code and managing those machines. So I think the piece about how do you handle stuff inside a warehouse is another area of where future development is likely to happen. The third piece is logistics. We talked about the airlines. We talked about how it is an important part of the middle mile for us, why it is good for the country. But we have been working with the railways from 2019 now, for the last 3-4 years now, to say, how do we use some of the passenger trains, which are high speed express trains, to go and move from point A to point B. So from using a Shatabdi train, how do I move from Delhi to Chandigarh by 11 a.m.? And that's a 4-hour, 5-hour journey. But using the trains and railways is a great example of how we are now partnering with the ecosystem, which is also the government, to say, hey, can we work together and partner here? So I think some of those partnerships are also going to become very visible, very powerful, because we connect a physically existing infrastructure with what the future holds for us, or what the future needs for us are. The other piece I would say would be, while you talked about automation and technology and AI, is also enabling the seller ecosystem. To say, how does a small seller who's making bamboo handicrafts in Assam be able to sell it across the country? And therefore, how do we enable that person, that seller, to be tech savvy so that they could still put up their picture of the product and sell it on Amazon? And I think some of those would be great enablers for the business there. I think those would be the ones that come to my mind at this point of time.
No, perfect. I think that's absolutely fascinating to know, because technology becomes such a level player in terms of giving the inclusion and the opportunity to the seller ecosystem, and they get access to the market, which otherwise would have been, if not impossible, very difficult to have.
True, absolutely.
I can see Alliance playing a big factor here, right? Just collaborating with so many stakeholders so that your input really improves from a seller side, from the buyer side, demands from the local vendors as well.
No one is good at everything, is one of the things I've learned very early in my life. And we have to find the people that we can partner with and play with their strengths and play together. I'll give you an example. In India, the address quality is very poor. So you might see in a remote city saying, my house is the blue house behind the signal next to the bank. That's the address. That's exactly the address that gets printed on a shipping label. And I might not be able to find my address based on geocodes and latitudes and longitudes. But there is a local Kirana store who's delivering to the house of this person every single day. And when they're buying from the store, they're also having some kind of a credit. So this shopkeeper or the mom and pop store has credit reliability. Customer trusts them. They know when the customer is going to be available, and they know where the customer lives. So for me, when I have an address issue, I want to go and leverage the power of this mom and pop store. That is why we innovated and built the India first program called I Have Space, where a mom and pop store can actually deliver packages on behalf of Amazon at no investment. This is extra income for them. So it's a win-win for us. I find somebody who knows how to deliver in that area. And this Kirana store or the mom and pop store can make more money without any additional investment.
It's another example of multiplier effect.
Multiplier effect. And you are contributing to the economy. And that allows us to win together. And I think that's the kind of partnership that we are seeing scale up. We do this in almost like 400 cities now.
And when we are talking about these partnerships, what we are also seeing is that there is an increased focus from a sustainability perspective.
Right.
Many organizations are signing up for a net zero kind of a target. And the hardest part is to measure the scope 3. And guess what? Supply chain is actually, a lot of it is scope 3. Right? So given the fact that we are becoming more and more environmentally conscious, we are trying to become more and more inclusive as a society, and it is also getting measured and tracked and even rewarded in many cases in the external world. How do you see the focus on sustainability planning going forward?
I would say sustainability is the right thing. It's the right thing for our planet, for our customers, for the country. And so I would not take that as a constraint, but I would say, how do you use this as an opportunity to invent and innovate, right? So Amazon has been one of the first signatories for the climate pledge, which basically said that, look, get to zero carbon emissions by 2040, ahead of the Paris Accord, which said 2050. And we have been working in this in many spaces. So one area is about electric mobility. And I'll talk India for a minute to say, in 2020, we made a commitment to have 10,000 electric vehicles as part of our delivery fleet by 2025. We are well on track on that glide path, and we will meet that goal. This was over and above the Amazon's commitment of 100,000 EVs that Amazon made globally. So this India piece was separate on top of that. Similarly, so we have worked with many players in the market. You would have seen some of the announcements being made to see how we are partnering with people who can provide us. It could be two-wheelers, it could be three-wheelers. We're looking at four-wheelers, and we are finding out whether it is from point A to point B within the city, or can it be from city A to city B, because long distances have much larger payload as well. The other piece that I would say is solar, and we have worked very extensively on solar, both on-site solar and off-site solar. Most of our warehouses now have a solar panel on top, wherever the space permits, or we go for off-site solar as well. Water is an important thing for us. All our buildings which are new, have been designed over the last 7-8 years, have water harvesting systems to say that, look, water is precious for countries like India or Middle East, and therefore build it in the right manner from day one. Energy efficiency, etc., is common practices, so I will not talk about it. But packaging is another area where a lot of our customers have provided us feedback, and that's something that we've been continuously working on and will continue to work on. What would be the challenge for us? To say a warehouse will have a couple of million shipments, but you will not have to have a couple of million boxes to fit them right snugly. You would have a suite of boxes and packaging material where you would try to fit all of them and optimize them. So we use a lot of machine learning and data analytics to keep constantly looking at optimizing the size of the box. So imagine if you were trying to ship out a mobile 10 years ago, the mobile phones were smaller, right? You made a box and you designed a box saying, oh, 10 different varieties of mobile will fit in that box. But with different sizes of phones now coming, those boxes are irrelevant. So somewhere, if you don't use the data analytics to come in and say, the box sizes have to change to now accommodate a larger screen size and the 12-inch or the 14-inch tablets, how do you now build the box suite differently? And you do it because you do it based on what is available as data, what customers are buying, and try to optimize for, let's say, a box for a mobile phone, which will take the smallest one and the largest one. But the amount of air in the box might be different for the two sizes, right? So what we have been focusing on is to work with AI and ML to identify how do you constantly keep looking at the box suites. Similarly, elimination of single-use plastic. In the middle of COVID, India eliminated single-use plastic in all its operations from our fulfillment centers. It was hard because you have plastic in so many places when you do packaging, but now today we have already done that part of it. You look at the amount of recycle that we have in packaging material. In India, for example, all our vendors are expected to bring in 100% recycled corrugate material. So our corrugate boxes are made from 100% recycled material. So there's a lot of work that we are doing in the packaging space, single-use elimination, packaging material, reducing the size of the shipments. And some of you actually got shipments which just have your name and a label and an eco-friendly label saying this has no external packaging. And that's an opportunity where we are working with vendors or manufacturers to say, you already have a corrugate box that is protecting the inner product. If you could just make it a little bit more efficient in terms of transport worthiness, then I don't need to put another box around the box. And that's the partnership that we have with many vendors, including Unilever and others, to say how we can design e-commerce ready packaging so that you don't need to overpack it again. I think there's a lot of opportunity in this space, but it's also an exciting space to work.
Yeah, and I quite agree with you, Akhil, that this is an opportunity to not just look at it more from a compliance, but actually to differentiate in terms of how you reach closer to your customers and how you can be more responsive, socially responsive that way. And the customers are actually going to appreciate that, and they may not mind paying a 1 rupee or a 2 rupee extra because they are probably thinking that it is being done for a good cause because you're doing it for the sake of the environment. So completely agree with you on that.
In every single operation, every single aspect of your business, there is so much of interaction with external factors. And if we were to bring in one of the largest external stakeholders beyond your customers and vendors is the government. You operate in the country. What are some of the areas where you believe it would be good to see some of the investments amplified from government side that could really help further shape the evolving nature of e-commerce or commerce itself?
Yeah. Great question, Kunj. I think when I said transform the way India buys and India sells, we couldn't do it by ourselves. Right? We have to build these partnerships. And the government of India and the states governments have been very helpful and conducive for us to run our operations. If you look at the National Logistics Policy and you look at Honorable Prime Minister's Gati Shakti initiative, they're both so important for this industry, whether it's manufacturing, whether it's e-commerce, because it builds a logistics infrastructure. It allows this to scale as a global network, right? The pieces about execution is the one that we continue to work on. If you look at the two policies, NLP and Gati Shakti, one is about creating the infrastructure. The other one is changing our systems and policies, right? So, for example, if you take this portal which has been created to say any issues that a customer has or a company has around supply chain actually can go and put in the e-log system as one of the opportunities that the government has provided. Similarly, this whole piece of this unified visibility of transportation and data is a great place where literally, I think 7 ministries and 100 apps are all coming together in one operation platform so that there's end-to-end visibility. All of these are great initiatives, and I think will not just empower the e-commerce industry, but manufacturing and any kind of industries in India. So I would say the partnership is strong, which is the reason why I said we also work with Indian Post. We work with India Post. They were our first carrier in the beginning. We work with the Indian Railways. We work with Warehousing Corporation in terms of warehousing and stuff like that. So there's a lot of partnerships that we have built. And I think the government is also changing its policies based on what we need. So, for example, women in night shift operations in the warehousing wasn't very common. Today, we have many state governments who have now changed their policies to bring in women in night shift operations in a warehouse. They were okay to do it in customer service operations, etc. But in warehousing operations, that's a new thing that the governments, many states governments have changed their policies. Similarly, governments have changed their policy to say, what can we do with transportation? What can you transport? Railways has now worked with us together to say, how do you have cargo on a passenger train like Shatabdi? Shatabdi was to move people from point A to point B very quickly, but they changed the policy to allow something for e-commerce to be carried on to that. So I think the partnership is great. We are working together. There's a lot more to achieve together, but that's what the exciting part is. The future is so exciting.
What I love about the response, Akhil, is we always look for what more people can do, what more government can do. But these examples, just to amplify and bring this to the fore, we don't see this. The regular people, all of us, don't see this day to day, how much of this is already happening, right? And it's fantastic that when we hear through these interactions, it's really nice to see and commend those practices as well.
It's a question of the partnership. I think it's a question of doing the win-wins. It's a question of us being able to explain what is it that is being asked for. What is the benefit of that? And the government has been very progressive. I mean, we just launched our air from Telangana, and we have been operating there. We have the largest campus in Telangana. So we have been very supported by many governments. And that's the reason we have been scaling up, like having our sort center operations in 19 states, FC operations in 15 states. It's not easy unless you have the support of the government.
Excellent. Very, very nice to hear. Very heartening to hear what we're seeing.
Thank you very much, Akhil, for spending the time with us. We spoke on a slew of subjects, starting from growth to efficiency, to customer centricity, to sustainability, and then also about resilience. So I think this is a very, very rich area which is evolving very quickly. And I hope this would have given you a flavor of things to come. So with that, once again, Akhil, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Kunj. Thank you, Sudipta.
Thank you.